Our objectives with Lesson 7, the Roaring Twenties, are to be able to describe how increased leisure time and technological innovations led to a widespread shared popular culture, analyze the changing role of women in the 1920s, and describe how the concept of modernism shown in art and literature reflected post-war disillusionment. This new mass culture partly arose because Americans enjoyed more leisure time. Here's a photo in the 1920s of families dressed up in their Sunday best for a picnic after a drive in the countryside. The new motion picture industry was perfect to take advantage of this new leisure time. Technology to make motion pictures rose to new heights in the 1920s. Huge studios in California established monopolies. Films diffused popular American culture to the rest of the world. Let's take a look at one of the most innovative motion picture stars of the day, Charlie Chaplin, a very popular silent film star who portrayed ordinary folks and portrayed social issues and characteristics of the time. The Jazz Singer was the first movie with sound synchronized to the actions. First talkie. Audiences were amazed. Let's watch a clip.
Wonderful pals are always hard to find. Some folks have one, some folks have none. And I was alone for years, but fate was kind. And in the end, sent me a friend. Although he's not much higher than my knees, still he's the greatest thing on earth to me. Dirty hands, dirty face, leads the neighbors a chase, but his smile is as cute as can be. Making noise, breaking toys, always fighting the boys, but his eyes, they're a vision to see. And when my work is done, coming home to the setting sun, from the gate he'll start to run, and then I'll kiss my boy. Dirty hands, dirty face, little devil, that's what they say. But to me, he's an angel of a joy.
Radio also had an incredible impact on American society. Starting in KDKA in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1920, within 3 years, 600 stations, 600,000 radio sets, brought distant events into millions of homes, unmatched by any other technology at the time. And when you weren't listening to the radio, you could listen to the phonograph and share popular music across the country. Pause the film and take a look at this. Why do you think there was such a significant increase in movie attendance in 1930? Just like today, Hollywood's chief rival for the creation of heroes were the nation's baseball parks, football fields, and boxing rings. Most sports stars were local before the 1920s. Now they were national. Many women at this time challenged political, economic, social, and educational boundaries to prove that their role was as vital outside the home as inside it. The effect of these changes was incredible. Individualism and modernism of the early 1920s prompted many women to see themselves as equal to men, deserving the same political and social rights. When you think flappers, I want you to think about social rights. The image of the flapper is quintessential 1920s fashion, a bold, fun-loving young woman who symbolized a revolution in manners and morals. They changed conventions of dress, hairstyle, and behavior. Many Americans disapproved. This was the traditional view, the Victorian era clothing. Enjoy this video. It shows archival footage of flappers, jazz clubs of the 1920s, the style, the dancing, the music.
but gee, he likes to bill and coo. And I never cared to bill and coo, but he likes to bill and coo, and that's my weakness now. Oh, at last I've got you here, so I can tell you, dear, that your funny disposition almost drives me wild. I know that you could be so nice and sweet to me, but you treat me just as though I'm a child. I ask you for a kiss, you give me just one kiss. When I want another kiss, I don't be like that. And when I want a pet, and I think we're all set, you play so hard to get. Don't be like that. I wish I knew if you really love me. The things you do makes me think that you don't think much of me. You know, we'd make a lovely pair if you could only care. But you're a Frigidaire. I don't be like that.
Maybe it's time you went and asked Great Grandma what she was doing during the 1920s. In literature and arts, you saw a reflection of the impact of World War I on Americans. The war altered the way writers and artists viewed the world, changing the way they approached their craft and inspiring them. The Lost Generation is viewable through many genres of art, like the paintings of Edwin Hopper, who expressed their reservations about the progress of civilization. Automatic Express, one of my favorite Hopper paintings. Like jazz musicians, painters in the 20s took the pulse of American life. Painters such as Hopper and Rockwell Kent showed the rougher side of life. Georgia O'Keeffe's paintings of natural objects suggested something larger than merely just the paintings themselves. Pause the video and take a look. What themes dominated American post-war novelists' works? Literary work flowered. Gertrude Stein remarked to Ernest Hemingway that he and other American writers were all a lost generation, a group of people disconnected from their country and its values. Soon this term was taken up by the flappers as well. How did radio affect American society during the 1920s? Well, I'll tell you this, it didn't create social hierarchies based on the availability of programs. It did help produce a standardized culture. People all across the country were listening to and loving the same programs. Why did Charles Lindbergh rise to fame? Well, Lucky Lindbergh didn't have a YouTube channel, he wasn't a Vine star, and he wasn't making crazy TikToks. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, he flew on a non-stop solo journey across the Atlantic Ocean. What did the flapper symbolize? It wasn't simply the success of the women's suffrage movement, since it didn't have anything to do with voting. They symbolized a rejection of Victorian traditions from the previous generation. They weren't an intellectual movement or a voting movement. It was a movement about social mores and breaking with the past. Who were members of the lost generation? They weren't farmers. They weren't radicals. They were simply disillusioned American writers that sought new forms of expression.